So this is as an Elias Neshama for Tzvi Ben Moshe Ruvain, and I feel so privileged to have Rabbi Kessin. He spoke last year for his Yortzeit. Rabbi Kessin, as you all know, is world-renowned, I believe, scholar, educator, speaker. We all listen to his riveting connections. We have all been connected to his Lashon Hara Shiurim, which have changed the face of Lashon Hara, and also has started. He was the impetus for the Chofetz Chaim Foundation. And my brother loved him very dearly. I know that they spoke a lot about Hashkafa, and Rabbi Kessin, he focuses a lot on Hashkafa. Rabbi Mendel Kessin received smicha, rabbinical ordination, from Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Zichron Livracha, Rav Shlomo Schreiber, and Rabbi Levine, chief rabbi of Netanya. He was also very close with Rav Chaim Friedlander, Zichron Livracha, and helped with the publication of the Sifrei HaRamchal. Rabbi Kessin has a PhD in psychology from Fordham University and runs a private practice in Lakewood. An internationally known lecturer and educator, Rabbi Kessin has spoken extensively throughout the world, including the United States, Europe, South Africa, Canada, and Israel, among other places. He has spoken on topics Hashkafa, learning mythology, and Shmiras HaLashon, with emphasis on the writings of Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, the Ramchal. The Chofetz Chaim Heritage Foundation was started as a result of being inspired by one of Rav Mendel's Lashon Hara Shiurim. Rav Kessin was also the featured speaker at one of their first Tisha B'Av video events. The audio part of the video was distributed on 200,000 tapes. Rabbi Kessin is one of the few teachers that lectures extensively on the learning mythology of the Ramchal, enabling one to significantly improve his understanding of Gemara, Mishnah, and Halacha. This learning mythology, based on several of the Ramchal Svarim, is an amazing tool to analyze structure and synthesize any limud. It's impossible to overstate the benefits of this efficient way of learning and remembering for our generation. Among Rabbi Kessin's many shiurim are the acclaimed series on contemporary events in the 21st century. To listen to and read more on past shiurim of Rabbi Mendel Kessin, please go to the following website. And I posted that on the Nishmas group. And once I share the recording, everything will also be, all the connections will be on the YouTube channel. So on that, I feel very privileged and honored to have the esteemed Rabbi Mendel Kessin. Go ahead, Rabbi Kessin.
There are obviously many topics one can speak about, but I'd like to take a topic which I've never heard really spoken by anybody. So I thought it would be an interesting opportunity, especially because it's something that is unique. And I believe that it can actually guarantee you a place in Olam Haba, no matter where you stand. Now, that's obviously not an easy position to justify, but I believe that that's what it can do, as you will see yourself. The question that I want to answer is, does the Rabbeinu Shalom, does God have any challenges? Now, the answer to that is, obviously, no. Whatever he does with an infinite ability, Kol Yochel and so on, we all know that. And everything he does is infinitely easy. There's nothing there. I can go into a long explanation, but suffice it to say that basically everybody knows that the Rebbe Hashem is a Kol Yochel. But I'm going to show you that there is something, so to speak, Kav Yochel, that is challenging to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Even though on his level there isn't, but from our perspective there is. The question is, how does he overcome it? What is that challenge? And I will show you something which is utterly fascinating. What exactly can be challenging to the Rebbeinu Shalom? Well, the only thing that can be challenging to the Rebbeinu Shalom obviously since he can do everything, is something that he does voluntarily, that he submits to voluntarily. Well, really, he wants it to go in one direction. But let me be more specific. The Rosham decided, without going into the specifics, that he is going to create a creation with beings. And he wants to give them or bestow upon them an infinite state of goodness, something called Olam Haba, which is really, when you think about it, infinite bliss eternally. That's basically what Olam Haba is, without going into what's in Olam Haba. So he wants to do that. But the question obviously is that the Rosham has to deal with is, does he want to create beings and give this state of infinite pleasure for free? It means without any labor, nothing, no, you don't have to do anything to earn it. Or does he want to give it, and therefore that would be called a gift? Or does he want mankind, which obviously became the people that will be in Olam Haba, does he want mankind to work for it? Now, the concept of working for it means that you get, I should say, with whatever you do. If you do what the Rebbe wants, and obviously he has to designate a task, then you will get Olam Haba. If you don't do it, then you won't get Olam Haba. Now, he came to a decision. It's a long discussion about why and so on. Rosham came to a decision that you must earn your Olam Haba. That's called din, justice. Justice simply means that for every effect, there must be a cause. You want Olam Haba, so you have to cause Olam Haba. You see, that's called din, justice. Midas hadin, that's what it's called. So the Rebbe decided, without going into why, that he's going to create the world using Midas hadin, which means that he will give you Olam Haba, but on one condition. You must earn it with whatever task he designates that you have to do. And guess what? That's what he does. He now voluntarily, the Rebbe himself, submits to this universal cosmic law that you must earn what you will receive in Olam Haba. Like I said, it's called Midas Hadin. And the major feature of Midas Hadin is not only that there has to be a task to do, but you obviously have to have free will. Now, free will simply means that any decision that you make has to be yours and not inserted into your mind by God. That's what it means. Free will, what is free? Free means completely uncompelled desire, decision that you must make. Nobody puts it into your mind to do. And therefore that is called free will. After that, it's up to the Rabbanah Shalom. But basically, the decision to act in a certain way has to be free. So the Rabbanah creates a property called Bechira, which means free will. And we know that because it says, Ubachalta b'chayim, and you will choose life. Well, that obviously means you have choice. Now you know why you have free will. In order to incorporate Midas Hadin into your decision, you see. Because if you have free will, then you are totally responsible for what you do. And as a result of that, you create the effect, you see. This is what free will allows. Your complete cause or responsibility of what you do. And if you do the right thing, you get Olam Haba. If theoretically you would do the wrong thing or not do the right thing, then you would not get Olam Haba. That's the whole concept of Midas Hadin, which is the attribute of justice. You see, now the Rasham, like I said, creates Midas Hadin with the property of free will. And now it's all up to you. In fact, everything that you get in Olam Haba, right, you caused. Now, to make sure that free will operates in a normal way, he creates a malach that will be the supervisor of Midas Hadin. And that angel is called the Satan. And that Satan, really his main job, like I once said, is three components. The first component is to tempt you, to make sure that you are tempted to do bad or not use free will and so on, or not do the will of God. If he succeeds, then he's makatreg. He prosecutes. What does he prosecute? He prosecutes the concept of free will. He prosecutes the concept of Midas Hadin, the attribute of justice, because you are held responsible. You see, you are held responsible. That's din. That's justice. And he's assigned that role. That's his job. He's created for that purpose, to uphold and supervise justice. In any case, now, what does the Rabbi Shem want? That's the setup. But what does he want? He obviously wants people to be in Olam Haba, right? We would assume that's what he wants. And since the job of creating Olam Haba, which I will not go into, is up to the Jews, they have been given, the children of Avraham Avinu, have been given that job to create Olam Haba, right? So clearly the Rebbe Hashem wants the Jews to have Olam Haba. So he wants them to choose the direction of doing the will of God. Now basically the will of God is to do the mitzvahs. That's basically the rule. So obviously the Rebbe Hashem wants by Israel, the Jewish people, to do the mitzvahs. And that will earn them Midas Hadin of Olam Haba. But wait a minute, something wrong here. What is it? Because if you have free will to do the will of God, which are the mitzvahs, what happens if you don't do mitzvahs? What happens if you utilize free will not to do the will of God, but do the opposite? Well, the Rabbi Shem really cannot interfere at all. Because if he interferes by taking away the free will, then you are not responsible for what you did. Then how can he not give you Olam Haba? How can he punish you? You're not responsible. So obviously, the will of God that you should do his will and get into Olam Haba is contrary and contradictory, right? And mutually exclusive, right? To the other side, that you need to earn Olam Haba. He's not going to interfere with your free will. But what happens if you decide not to do it? Then what happens? Well, then the will of God apparently is frustrated. You know where we see this? We see this by the Mabul. We see the people of the Mabul, right? What they did is evil to such an extent where the Rebbe Hashem decided to destroy the entire planet, leaving only Noach and his family and animals, species, whatever, alive. That clearly went against his will, his desire, right? So we see it did happen, and the Rebbe Hashem destroyed the earth. So this is a real quandary. And let me put it this way. This ostensibly is a tremendous challenge to God, because he dictates that he will not interfere, or else you wouldn't be held responsible. if he took away your free will? How does God solve this problem? You see, and it's a real problem. How do you get around Midas Hadin, the attribute of justice, right? When you are enjoined, or rather you are not commanded, but you have voluntarily decided to accommodate that rule of Midas Hadin. That is the question that I seek to answer. And the answer itself indicates many, many profound concepts of how the Rebbe did it. Because obviously the Rebbe does do it. You see, how does he do it? That's the question. And the answer, the way he did it, as I will show you, is he subjected Avram Avinu to a terrible test that we know of. It's called the Akedah, the binding of Yitzchak. That's how he did it. And not only that, you'll understand why the test took on the form of killing Yitzchak, and why it happened at the end, and why we're still deriving reward for something that happened 4,000 years ago. I mean, we would think, come on, how much reward can we get for the effort that Avram Avinu did? Yet it still goes on and on. Why? And the answer is the challenge that God has. Well, let's see. Now, if we ask ourselves, well, we know what the test was, where the Rebbe appears to Avram Avinu, right, and says, I want you to kill Yitzchak. Although he didn't use that language, what he said is, I want you to bring Yitzchak up on the Mizbeach and sacrifice the Haleu Li'olah, and sacrifice him, bring him up. It's the language as an Oilah. Clearly what that means is you need to kill him. You need to offer a human sacrifice called Yitzchak. That's what he commanded Avram Avinu. Now Avram Avinu listens to this, right? Now he knew it was really the Rebbe Shem talking to him, because that's one of the properties of Nevuah. Not only do you understand what is being said, but you know with absolute certainty that it is God talking to you, and it's not some kind of dream or shade, demon or whatever. That's part of the properties of Nevuah. So he knew it was the Rebbe Shalom. What was the Nisayon of Avram? What was the test of Avram Avinu? Well, let me list a couple. They clearly were part of the test. But as we will see, that's not the real test. Well, let's take a look at some of the tests. First of all, Avram Avinu is struck with incredible contradictions. One, how could God command me to kill anybody? The Rebbe is ultimately tremendous, infinite chesed, kindness. Based on what? Is Yitzchak chayav misa? Because not only is not chayav misa, which is one test, he doesn't deserve this punishment, but the other test is the Rebbe doesn't do this kind of stuff. Not only that, it went against the nature of Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu, we know, was the quintessential Baal Chesed. So how can he take somebody's life? That's the second Yisoin. It's against his nature. Not only that, but as I said before, why? Yitzchak didn't do anything. Not chayiv misa. So why should he have to die? What kind of din is this? What kind of judgment is justice is this? It makes no sense. Not only that, we know that the Baruch Shem abhors human sacrifice. I mean, there's a mitzvah in the Torah that you cannot sacrifice. The Molech was a deity that they used to offer their kids, sacrifice them, human sacrifices, right? Baruch Shem doesn't do this. Is aware of doing this kind of stuff. Not only that, Yitzchak is his son. Could you imagine being commanded to kill your son? And not only that, it's even worse. He's the last Jew, right? You kill Yitzchak, there's no more Jews, right, of the stature of Yitzchak. All of these things were tremendous tests that Avram Avinu faced. No question about that. And they all instantly went to his mind, right? Yes. But there was one test that was the greatest of all, right? And that was the real test. The Rabbi Shalom appeared to Avram Avinu as irrational. What is irrational? Irrationality is something where reality contradicts what you said, yet you still hold what you say. It's irrational. Doesn't make sense. It's a contradiction. You see, what was the contradiction that God said? Well, he said, Ki b'Yitzchak yikor lecha Zorah. In Yitzchak will be called the Jewish people, right? That is a divine prophecy. And the Moshe never contradicts prophecy for the good. You see, so he said that the Jewish people will have its continuity to Yitzchak, right? Not Yishmael. Meanwhile, how can the Rebbe Shem command Avram Avinu to sacrifice Yitzchak? That is irrational. That's a contradiction, minei ubei, as they say. That is completely impossible, because that nevuah contradicts, that prophecy contradicts the prophecy that the Jewish people will continue to Yitzchak. Now we know Yitzchak was not married. He had obviously no kids. So if you kill him now, that's the end of the Jewish race. Right. And there's no guarantee. And the Moshe said, Ki b'Yitzchak, through Yitzchak. So you can't say that maybe Avram Avinu will have more kids. No, the Moshe didn't say that. He said through Yitzchak, he named the person that would be the continuation of the Jewish people. So Avram Avinu all of a sudden is facing a God that is irrational. How can the Moshe have issued two contradictory, mutually exclusive? Means if A is true, B cannot be true. And if B is true, A cannot be true. They're what's called mutually exclusive ideas or prophecies. And the Rebbe never does that. You should know the Rebbe does many things that we do not understand, but they're not irrational. You know, we don't know the reason. That's true, so it's unknown. But it's not irrational. It's not something that cannot be true because they mutually exclude themselves. But here, by the Akedah, the Rebbe was issuing a mutually exclusive, completely irrational, contradictory prophecies. If one is true, the other cannot be true. And if the other is true, then this one cannot be true. Well, how could you have both at the same time? That's called irrational. And could you imagine Avram Avinu is faced with his understanding of God, that the Baruch is irrational? Do you have any idea what kind of sign that is to a brilliant mind like Avram Avinu? And his belief in who the Baruch is, the quintessence of justice, we don't understand. Nor can we really fully understand the test of Avram Avinu. The incredible thing is that he went through it anyway. He probably said to himself, listen, this is completely irrational. I'm being given two contradictory prophecies. This makes no sense. Is God insane? Because irrationality is usually done by insane beings. No, it cannot be that way. In some way, this must make sense. Right. And Avraham Avinu believed that was the truth. That even though to me it makes no sense, in fact, it's impossible for a rational being to hold this, it must be true. And in the end, it was true. It was rational. Because the Rabbi Shalom never told Avraham Avinu to kill Yitzchak. He just said, bring him up as an oilah, as a burnt offering, right? But he never said, go through and kill him. No. But he wanted Avraham Avinu, obviously, to misinterpret what he said, to have this test. In any case, so Avraham Avinu passed the test in an incredible way. He actually did a command of God that was impossible for a rational being to make. The question that we have to ask, and he did it with incredible speed, right? Didn't hesitate a minute, as it says, Vayashkim Avram Baboika, and he got up early in the morning to do the command of God. Could you believe the unbelievable loyalty, devotion of Avraham Avinu, the love that he had for the Rebbe Shem, that he was willing to do this even though it was completely irrational. In any case, this is the story of the Akedah. Now, the question we have to ask is, why would the Rebbe Shem do that? You know, the Rebbe Shem does many things that are unknown. The reasons are unknown. We don't know why God does what he does. It's based on, infinite, profound reason that we do not grasp. That's fine. Okay. You can do that. But they're not irrational. You see. But the Akedah was irrational. It was really impossible. And we know, of course, that it wasn't. Because the Rebbe Shem said, bring him up as an Oilah. But Avram didn't know that. Why would he want to look as an irrational deity in front of Avraham Avinu? Irrational. Why? And the truth is that it's such a profound question that Rashi deals with it. Rashi actually answers the question. If you take a look in the Parsha of Akedah, right after the test, Avraham Avinu is successful, then what happens is a Malach stops Avraham Avinu, we know that, and he says, Ata Yadati, now I know that you are a God-fearing man. That's what the Malach says. Now, Rashi is bothered by that statement. What do you mean, now I know? Until now, you didn't know that he was God-fearing, that Avraham Avinu is God-fearing. So Rashi brings down a medrash, an incredible medrash that reveals a profound secret. What is that secret? The secret is challenge that God has to overcome or supersede Midas Hadin. That's the secret. What does Rashi say? Well, here's what Rashi says. Now, here's what Rashi says. The Rebbe Shem says with this test that Avraham Avinu was incredibly successful in passing. Now I have what to answer the Satan, and the Ummah Olam. I now have a legal argument, a defense to answer with the victory of Avraham Avinu. Why? What do they say? Well, remember what I told you. The Satan is in charge of dinam, justice. That's his job. So apparently, the Rebbe Shem had a tremendous conflict. What was that? What does the Satan and the nations of the world say? They say the following: we don't understand. Why do you love the Jews? Why do you want to give them Olam Haba? Why have you assigned them such an incredible, distinguished responsibility of bringing a tikkun, of rectifying creation? Why do you give them Olam Haba? Why? Because they sin. They don't deserve Olam Haba. Right? You know how many times the Jews sin over the thousands of years? And at the end of time, that's exactly what they're going to say. And not only that, they say it in every generation. You see, they say, what do you want with the Jews? They don't deserve to be your agents, to bring the creation to Olam Haba. Right? That's what you assign them. But they're always sinning. You see, they're always doing averis, chatoim, pshoim, and so on. So therefore, according to the midah, the attribute that you assigned, called midas hadin, they don't deserve neither Olam Haba nor the agents to bring about the transformation of this world into Olam Haba. According to the din, and they're right, because the Sultan knows exactly how to evaluate dinam, justice. That's his job. So he's right, and certainly the nations of the world follow his argument. They don't deserve Olam Haba. That's what they say. Who deserves it? Well, let us do it. Why can't you give the job of what's called tikkun to the Ummah Ha'olam, to the nations of the world? That's what they claim all the time, right? And that's exactly what the challenge is. Midas Hadin comes right in and says, excuse me, if you actually adhere to Midas Hadin, the Jews can't get Olam Haba. And they're right. According to justice, apparently they're right. So what does the Rabbi Shalom face? There it is. Challenge. What does he do? He cannot dismiss Midas Hadin. He can't, just remove it. He can't dismiss the Sultan. He can't kill the Sultan. What's he going to do? He has to answer the charge, right? Because God is a God of truth and justice. That's what he decided to behave as. So what is he going to do? He needs to answer the charge. And the problem is, he doesn't have an answer. Remember I said? He has a challenge, right? Because he cannot interfere with free will. He has to let them do what they want to do. And if they want to destroy their opportunity of Olam Haba, the future world, so be it. But the Moshe doesn't want that. He wants the Jews to succeed because he loves them. But he needs a legal argument, or else he lost. Obviously, the Moshe knows what to do. What did he do? What was the legal argument? The answer was Yakedah, right? Now you know why he did Yakedah. And now you will understand why we need to do the essence of the Yakedah to justify the same result. What does that mean? Well, here's what the Baal Shem answered. He answered with the Yakedah of Avram Avinu. Remember what I said the essential idea of the Yakedah was? The essential idea of the Yakedah is what? Is that Avram Avinu is loyal to me. He has allegiance to me. Even though I appeared to him irrational. That's incredible. Why would he do that? I mean, it's one thing to appear to him as an unknown cause. But if I'm irrational, any person would say, hey, this deity, there's something wrong here. Either he doesn't know what he's doing, right? Or he's insane. I mean, whatever. But he certainly would not follow me because it's irrational. It's contradictory. both nevuos are mutually exclusive. Of course he doesn't have to listen, but he believes in me that I am not irrational. So even though he's going to do something that no person would do in his right mind, to listen to, right, a commandment that completely contradicts the whole sustenance and maintenance of the Jewish people through Yitzchak, and he's going to listen to me, right, and kill Yitzchak? Do you have any idea what kind of irrationality he is doing? He's irrational. Avraham Avinu is irrational because he's listening to something that he cannot figure out to be rational or sane. Look at the love that he has for me. And therefore, mido keneged mido, measure for measure. If justice now says, in support of Avraham Avinu, that wait a minute, if Avraham Avinu now acts irrationally, which is incredible, then how could I not act irrational to him? Which means that even though he sins, even though the Jews sin all the time, and therefore justice demands that you do not give them olam habo, I will act contrary to justice, rationality, because he does that. So justice itself demands that I act the way he does. And if he does not follow normalcy, justice, so then I will not follow it, and I will allow all the Jews, as long as they are loyal and practice, even if they do not understand me, even if they think I'm crazy, right? And how many things in history has God done that is completely insane, if you think about it, from a rational standpoint. What the Rebbe Shalom did is incredible. He created a legal argument where he could save the Jewish people, even though, really, they do not deserve olam habo. That's really what the Akedah is about. The Jews acted irrationally. Avraham Avinu acted irrationally. And therefore, neither do I, vis-a-vis acting with justice to the Jewish people. It's incredible when you think about that the Rebbe Shalom, to get around the challenge of how do I get around Midas Adin, the attribute of justice, you had to create a legal argument 4,000 years ago. And now you know why it's at the end. It was the last Nisayan, the 10th Nisayan of Avraham Avinu. Why? Because the taina that the Sultan and the nations of the world have will be especially prominent at the end of time, when time is about to be over. Mashiach comes, right, and brings the glorious era of Mashiach. Then the Sultan's going to get up and say, oh no, you can't do this. You are violating the law of Midas Hadin yourself. You can't do that. You swore that you will observe justice. That's why the Akedah comes at the end, because the Akedah is the answer at the end to the Sultan. And we now understand how the Rebbe Shalom gets around the challenge. This is a very, very important idea. You know, it's interesting. At the Chet HaEgel, at the sin of the golden calf, when Moshe Rabbeinu called out and he destroyed the Luchos Rishonos, right? He said, Mila Shem Eli, who is to God? Eli, come to me. He shouldn't have said that. He should have said, who did not sin should come with the golden calf should come to me. That's what he should have said, right? Because that's what's proper. If you didn't sin, then you could live and come to me. Instead he said, who is to God? Come to me. And Moshe Rabbeinu was revealing a profound secret. Even if you did the sin of the golden calf, right? And you have to die and so on, whatever. But who is to God? Come to me. As long as you are loyal to God, as long as you believe in Him, as long as you have allegiance to the Ribono Shel Olam, you will live because of the Akedah. That's the key. The key is no matter what God does to you, no matter how difficult your life is, you must be loyal to the Ribono Shel Olam. You must believe there is a reason for all of this, even though it makes no sense. For instance, what makes no sense? The Holocaust. The Holocaust made no sense. I mean, we've witnessed anti-Semitism, of course, but where Jews are butchered, slaughtered, mutilated, turned into ashes, right? And then their bones, their fats are made into soap, and their skin is made into lampshades. I mean, this never happened before. 6 million Jews got killed for no reason whatsoever. You know, it's interesting. Even though we witness major slaughters of the Jews throughout the centuries, but it's because the nations felt threatened by the Jews. You know, they wanted to take over, or they wanted tribute, money, and the Jews said no. So, okay, they fought for what they believed in. But the Nazis, Yamach Shemam V'Zichram, what they did was unparalleled. They killed Jews because you kill Jews. If you are Jewish, your being deserves to die. You see, that's the greatest anti-Semitism. But why did God allow that? How could He allow that? You have any idea what 6 million Jews are? It's the cream of Jewry. That's one of the reasons why the Jews only number, after 4,000 years of giving birth to other Jews, they only number 15 million Jews. How's that possible? We're around how many years? 4,000 years. And all we have to show for it on this world is 15 million Jews? You know? I mean, the Chinese people 2,000 years ago had how many people? Historians estimate 25 million people. And today they're 1.4 billion people, of course. With normal population dynamics, that's what happens. We should be at least, like the Chinese, multiplied at least 25 times, so that we should be at least 500 million Jews. But we're not. We're only 15 million Jews. Why? Because we've been butchered, slaughtered, mutilated, right? Crushed by the nations of the world. Why would the Muslims do that? These people. This is basically irrational. Not only that, what about the 2,000 years of Golus? Right? It's a long time. Where's the rationality of 2,000 years of Golus and so on? What about all the other slaughters and so on? And not only that, in every person's life, he can point to things that make absolutely no sense. It's not that they're unknown. They defy logic. And if they defy logic, then they border on, right? They border on irrationality. Yet the Jewish people adhere. They are loyal to God. There you are. The Jewish people do the Akedah. Every Jew does the Akedah. And at the end of time, it's worse. We really do the Akedah. You know, it's interesting. There was a Rebbe named the Rizhin Rebbe, Rabbi Shlomi Rizhin. He's the head of the Biana, Sadigera, and so on. One of the great Hasidic Rebbe's masters, and so on. And he said something profound. He said that at the end of time, the Nisoyan, the level of difficulty of the test at the end of time for the Jewish people will be greater than, not even equal to, but greater than the Akedah of Avraham Avinu. You see, he said it. It will be greater than the level of the Akedah of Avraham Avinu. Do you imagine how great we are at the end of time, even though we look at ourselves as tremendously low, right? But still, that's what he said. So could you imagine that what we do living through today's time is greater according to him than the Akedah Yitzchak? And it is. When you look outside the world today, you can't believe the insanity of what goes on. Mutilating kids, transgender. What is this? Are they crazy? Educating kids, transgender, changing gender, right? And then socialism, right? To be able to go into somebody else's pocket, take his money. I mean, what has happened to this world? You know, the Nisyanis and so on. Where is the shalom of the world and so on? To us, it looks like what's called less din, less dayan. There is no justice. There is no judge. That's exactly what it looks like. Like God has left the planet and has left mankind his own shagasan and so on. We do not understand this, why God is allowing this. If you look outside, 15 million Jews, that's all there are. Most of them are complete ignoramuses. There was a poll taken, a statistic taken in England, that there are 15 million Jews left in the world. 13 million are gone, and I mean completely gone. They know nothing, no mitzvahs, no Torah. Many of them don't even know that they're Jewish. The amount of intermarriage is 70%, perhaps more. Why has God abandoned Jews? Well, obviously it has to do with sin. But this is not a way of bringing them back. Why doesn't God give more promise, more miraculous intervention? Good. We do not understand this. See, it's irrational. Because why would God want this? Is he not our Father? Is he not our King? Right? Are we not his children? We do not understand. The hanhoga of God in today's time is irrational. There's a being that claims to be a father, a being that claims that we are his children, even more, a being that claims to love us. Why would he do all this kind of terrible things? We do not understand. That is the irrationality of this time. Yet, Jews, try as they might, try to be loyal to God. And that is the source of the Akedah. And on that claim that the Jews still are loyal, there's still significant loyalty Jews have, we will get Olam Haba, all of us, because all of us in some way have done something to honor God, to believe in him, to be loyal. What's the uptake of all this? Remain loyal. Even if you feel you sin a lot, even if you feel it's difficult, in light of today's incredible temptation, don't give up. Remain loyal. Remember Moshe Rabbeinu's statement, Mi Lashem Elai. Who is Mi Lashem? Who is the God? Elai, come to me, Moshe Rabbeinu. Come to Olam Haba, right? And the Jews will get Olam Haba, you see, because they have not given up on their allegiance, their devotion to the Bereshit. So remember, no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, you are still beloved by God to the extent where he actually made sure that he would have a legal argument to defend or to counter the argument of the Satan, the nations of the world. Therefore, please think about that. Don't give up the belief in God. Don't give up the belief in a Messiah. Don't give up belief that someday there will be a time of unbelievable prosperity and unbelievable mazel of what the Hashem will give us and so on. Keep believing, keep holding on no matter what. Even if you sin, but don't give up God Himself and the belief that someday there will be a redemption. Thank you.
Wow. Wow, that was unbelievable. That was unbelievable, Rabbi Kessin. Unbelievable. I'm sure that some people are going to have questions. This was really remarkable, shiur, remarkable. I'm a little bit stunned because you were able to mix you were able to bring reality, realistic authenticity to, I think, what a lot of people feel or too afraid to say. And I just have a question. I'm going to open it up. Rivka wants to ask you something, but I have a question about the concept of the Mesiras Nefesh. First of all, somebody wrote on the bottom, and I want you to address it because I know what you're going to say, but somebody wrote that, but Hashem doesn't have to listen to the Satan. But so I want you to address that. But I also want to ask you the question that, you can say to some degree that there is a level of cause and effect. Like if you look at the Jews that came out of the Holocaust, and the pogroms and you look at our history, it's almost unbearable, the level of trauma, right? And so the question I have for you is, and why would Hashem put us in a situation where He knows on a great level that people are not going to be able to be loyal? That it's going to be very, very difficult to be loyal. When somebody came out of the Holocaust and we lost, not only did we lose 6 million Jews there, but then we lost millions of Jews afterwards whoever came out that couldn't bear to live within Judaism because they had nothing. They were worse than the Akedah. It was way worse than the Akedah. The Akedah was Yitzchak. The Akedah didn't happen. But if you look at the Jews that came out of the Holocaust, they lost everything. People lost their wives, their husbands, their children, their parents, their siblings, their grandparents. They came out completely alone. And who would blame somebody like that for not believing anything?
Let me try to answer the first one first. The Ramasham doesn't listen to the Satan.
Right.
The Satan is a nobody. He listens to what the Satan represents, what his job is. God assigned the Satan the job of a Makatrig. He is the one assigned to bring justice to the world. He also assigned, right, a senegar, a defense attorney, and that equalizes justice. So there are two sides. There's a side arguing for the client or the whatever, and there's a side prosecuting the client. God weighs justice. The Satan merely presents claim. The Satan is nothing more than a prosecuting attorney. However, the problem is he does his job all the time. Now, there's another concept which I don't want to go into because it's too lengthy, how God protected the Jews from the Satan by giving him a self-interest in surviving through their sin. So he no longer just does it for his own, for justice. He does it to survive because he takes their holiness that they get from the sin, and he eats it. He survives on that. But I don't want to go into that. It's too lengthy. That's one of the incredible things that God did to make sure that the Satan has a different type of interest. But God must listen to justice, or else he has made a mockery of it. And he decided that the universal law, basically, without adjustments, which I just gave one, he decided that you must have justice. You have to earn olam haba, like the Gemara says. Anybody who says that God overlooks sin, his life should be overlooked. Justice is absolute. But what he did do, and like I said, that's the challenge, he has to get around it. And he has given a number of ways. There's at least 10 to 15 ways that he gets around the challenge. I gave the greatest, I think, the most important. But there are many other ways. Rachamim is one of the ways where he saw that nobody will not sin. Everybody's going to sin, like Shlomo Melech said. Ein tzadik ba'oretz asher ya'aseh tov v'lo yechteh. Right? So therefore, God, in a certain sense, was compelled by the reality that it's not going to work. So therefore, he created Rachamim. What is mercy? Mercy is an interference of justice. What it does, it suspends the din, justice. Hopefully the person will do tshuva, and their justice will forgive him. You see, it's a very, very complex system. What I do want to say is, if anybody wants to listen to my shiurim, I have about 600 of them on YouTube, and I'm also on Torah Anytime. And you can hear all the ways God gets around justice and so on. There's over 631 shiurim, and they can listen to it. But like I said, the simple answer to your question is God must listen ultimately to justice. But what he does do, he provides many, many different strategies to get around justice in a way that's compatible with getting around it. So that's the answer to your question. And as far as your second question, that is exactly what God wants, to be irrational. He wants loyalty. And the claim of loyalty that the Jews have is what allows God to be loyal to them, even though they sin. That's the legal defense. You're looking at it, is to be irrational. And therefore, you're looking at events that happen and make no sense. They look so severe, as you point out. It's incredible. What do you mean? 90% of the Jews are gone? 90%? That's not rational, And you see that's what's going to happen. In fact, I many times I point out, the Torah is almost all forgotten among the Jewish people, because it says, that the Torah will be forgotten. The Torah will never be forgotten. There's a pasuk, right? Shokach Torah Mizarai, that the Torah will never be forgotten. You realize how that's in many ways it's a curse, because in order for that to be true, all you have to have is one Jew that remembers the Torah, and that curse can come into effect. And that's exactly what happened. This Daf Yomi business and so on and so forth. How many Jews are into Daf Yomi? It's 15 million Jews, right? And maybe you're lucky if you have 100,000, 150,000 Daf Yomi people. That's almost completely forgotten. That pasuk is fulfilled. We don't understand this. How could God allow, the forces of anti-Semitism, the forces of assimilation, the forces of intermarriage to be so successful? They need money for this, for all their temples and whatever and so on. Yet God makes them rich. He gives them money and so on. Fortunately, I don't want to get into it, we are now seeing the turnaround. But we don't understand, why are you aiding and abetting evil? Why are you aiding and abetting not only evil, but assimilation, anti-Semitism? right? They have to have the wherewithal to do this. Where do they get it from? The Rabbi Shalom. He's the only one that can give them success. Is that not irrational? Yes. All of this, if you add up all the things that make no sense, they sound like they're coming from an insane being, Chas v'Sholom, right? That's what it sounds like. Why? That's the question. Why is the Gullus 2,000 years, right? Why was there an Inquisition, crusades, Holocaust, expulsions, slaughters, pogroms? It's incredible. These things don't make sense, because it's not only how many there were, it's the brutality of this. The brutality of the Holocaust is not believable, yet it happened. We don't know. That's the insanity. You're looking at the Akedah. Don't you see? That's what the Akedah is, the end of time, in order to have a legal defense throughout the generations of why God can essentially get around Midas Hadin. Because the Jews are doing Midas Hadin. They are doing what getting around the attribute of justice requires. They are acting, even though the Rebbe Shem comes across not only unknown, but almost impossible to believe that he is behind and he gives success to evil, the foundations of evil, and so on. You see. But in any case, that's the answer to the second.
I'm going to open it up.
We live in a generation of the Akedah. In fact, we've been living in the generation of the Akedah for 2,000 years ago. It's even longer. Yeah, what were you going to say?
I'm going to open it up for Chai Rivka, and somebody else asked another question, but I just have one more question. If you look in the Chumash, Rabbi, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu give Yishmael, right, when Avram Avinu was very upset about it, right? I think, if I'm not incorrect, didn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu say to him, you have to listen? He understood that Sarah had understood, and then yet he got 2 brachas, Yishmael, not 1. He got 2 brachas.
So what is your question?
The question is because you look at Yishmael. Why did Yishmael have to get 2 brachas? Why wasn't 1 bracha enough? Even after HaKadosh Baruch Hu said that basically, I think it was with Avram and Sarah when he said to when he said, I think he said to Avram, Sarah knows better. Wasn't there something back and forth between that, and then Hagar left, right? And then Yishmael got this bracha, right? Not 1 bracha. They got 2 brachas. One was the brachas of the princes. One was the other bracha. Why would Hashem knew? I understand that there are vehicles to be used against us in order for us to be able to do our avodah in the world. But you look at the success of the Muslim world today. You look at their ability to have so much strength and their material wealth, and they're literally taking, they're everywhere, and yet.
Let me. Look, you've stated your question. Let me try to answer you. Do you know who Yishmael was? No, you don't. Just like most people were astonished by what I said about Esav, that he's a messianic figure, Trump, or that Esav was an Ov. I don't know if you heard that shir, but Esav was a patriarch. In fact, the Paneach Rozo, I have a whole shir. I have many shurim on that. And I have a whole series on Yaakov and Esav, who Esav was. Esav was an Ov. He was a patriarch, believe it or not. And like I said, Paneach Rozo says, that had Esav done his job, which is to contend with evil, without getting into the whole story, I've been many shurim on that. He would have been twice as great as Yaakov Avinu. As the Gematria of Esav twice Yaakov, Vav. In any case, and the Medrash says that had Esau done his job, he would have had 6 tribes. Yaakov would only have had 6, half and half. That was Esau, which most people never heard of. Yet it explains what's happening today. The Esau is doing tshuva. But anyway, I gave a whole share on that. You could look it up on the YouTube. Yishmael, did you ever notice how many tribes came out of Yishmael? 12.
No.
12. So, Yishmael, who he really was also not an Of, like Esav, but he was also part of the Tikkun, believe it or not. The Chidah says this in the Sefer called Pnei David. Yishmael was much greater than what we think. You see, he had a job in Ruchnius. Not only that, but ultimately he believed in God. But like Esav, he fell away. They had free will, and he fell away. But if you recall, Chazal say that Yishmael did tshuva in the end because he allowed Yitzchak, right, to go first by when Avraham Avinu died. So therefore, because of this, both of them are going to do tshuva in the end. Esav will do tshuva, which is the Tov Shebe Esav, which is Trump. And Yishmael will do tshuva. And that's why you're seeing the Abraham Accords brought about by the Tov Shebe Esav. Esav is the one who got Yishmael to do tshuva. And I believe Mohammed bin Salman is a character of Tov Shebe Yishmael. Not completely yet, because they're still doing it for protection from Iran. But they all want to join the Abraham Accords. Therefore, not only did he believe in God, but he did do some of the mission he grew up together with Yitzhak. Don't you think they stayed together and they talked as 2 children in a family too? Of course. So the first bracha is that he is not an Ov, but let's say he's a Chatzi Ov. The second bracha is that he assisted, that he did mitzvahs for most of a great deal of his life. It's only later that he became a Rasha. But when he lived with Avraham Avinu, right, Yishmael did mitzvahs. Does that not count? Not only that, he believed in God. Why do you think Avraham Avinu loved him so much? If he was a Rasha, would he have loved him? You see? And therefore he deserves. Now why 2? I don't know. We don't know why God. We don't know what God rewards, when he rewards it, and why he rewards it. But that's not a question. The real thing to focus on is, who is he? Most people have no idea who Yishmael is. And therefore, the descendants of Yishmael have power. The same thing as you ever notice who rules the world today, basically? It's Yishmael, the Muslim world, right? They have 2 billion people. And Christianity, that's Esav, Edom. It's also 2 billion people. That's 4 billion people are descendants of Yishmael and Esav. Because these are the 2 most powerful nations, after the Jews. There are many ways of showing that. But what I'm saying is that's why. You have to know who these people are in their pnimius, what their spiritual tasks are, in order to understand a great deal of the Chumash itself. I gave once a series of 17 cassettes, which is on my website, TorahThinking.com. TorahThinking.org is my website. It can be found on YouTube, right? Or put in Mendel, Kessin, and so on. And I have hundreds and hundreds of shurim on the pnimius of who these people were. And I have a series on Esav, 17 shiurim, 17 cassettes or shurim, whatever, that go through 3 parshas in the Torah: Toldus, Vayetze, Vayishlach. And I explain the hidden meaning of every single pasuk in those three parshiyos based on who these people were and why they became what they were. And we find that the psukim reveal two stories: the upper story, which is the obvious, and then the inner story, which is who they really are in the Ruchnius. Anybody could take a look at that. But anyway, that's why. The reason why it's hard to understand the Chumash, we don't really know who these people were. You see, and that's really the answer to your question. Just know who they are. Yishmael is not a simple person, and not that it's a problem, but he did tshuva. Why do you think there are Tanoim that are named Yishmael? Do you ever notice? How could you name a tzaddik or any Jew after a Russia? You see? But they did name Yishmael. They have many, people named Yishmael, right? There's a Tana, Yishmael Kohen Gadol. He was a Kohen Gadol. How in the world could he have a name like Yishmael if he's a Russia? And the answer is that there's a Toiv of Yishmael, right? I mean, you can go on and on, but that's the secret to the answers to many, many questions that you have, is to know the divine plan. And that tells you who these people were, what they did, what they accomplished, and where they failed. Just like I said now, what the Akedah, I gave you an understanding of the Akedah, which probably most people never heard of, or they don't even understand the import of what Rashi's saying, how the Rebbe had to provide a legal defense to get around Midas Adin. Most people never heard that concept. But that's what it is, you see. And we've been living through the Akedah for thousands of years, right? And that's why we survive, and so on. But there's so much more to say. Look, if anybody wants a lot of this stuff, you should go to my website, TorahThinking.org, or he should go to YouTube, or he should go to Torah Anytime. All three have all the tapes and all the hashkafa.
Hi, Rivka has a question for you, Rabbi Kessin. Go ahead, Rivka.
Yeah.
Hi, Rivka, your hand's up.
Shalom and toda rabba, Rabbi. First,
Yes.
two things. The first, I'd like to respond to what you just said, and then I'd like to ask a question. So it's to me, it just blew my mind what you were talking about, how we have 2 billion Christians and 2 billion Muslims, and this tiny fraction, us, the Jews. It's astonishing, and it shows us how profoundly powerful we are, that this tiny, tiny spark is actually keeping the universe together.
Correct.
Keeping us from being destroyed. That's amazing. So I think every one of us has to realize how incredibly powerful we are. And
right.
So anyways, so my question is, actually, I was recently listening to one of your shiurim, and you were talking about the 4 dimensions of man, and the 4th dimension being the meditative avoda, and connecting it to the profundity of Hashem's oneness, and bringing about the geula and the removal of Hester. So can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Elaborate on that? How much time do you have? That's the question. Each of these areas requires a foundation. It requires a manifestation. It requires, a tremendous amount of specifics and details. But I point out that there are different types of avodah, all of them essentially centering around one idea: get close to God, to believe that He is the only thing that exists, and therefore everything that occurs ultimately has to be in accordance with His will. That's the fundamental belief system, And like I said, the fundamental avodah that will preserve us ultimately is loyalty, allegiance to Him, no matter what. That's what will preserve us, and so on, But that is an avodah, the avodah of cognition, meditation, That was Nevuah. I have a series of tapes. Did you ever hear it? The Spiritual States, Shurim. There are 17 of them.
I'll look them up.
Look them up. There are 17 tapes or Shurim. And in fact, they are now being put out on the internet every other week. I call it the Spiritual States Shir of the Jewish religion. And they go through all the Olamas, meditation, the Avoid of Nevuah, Ruach HaKodesh, right? Gilei Eliyahu, all of that is included in those 17 cassettes. What they are, how to achieve them, and how prevalent they will be at the end of time. So I certainly would recommend you to go through all 17, and I think you will have a beautiful, comprehensive understanding of this incredibly important topic that will be prevalent in the Messianic era.
Rabbi Kessin, somebody just asked, I'm just going to finish off here. Somebody asked, why did we lose so many if Hashem gave us the bracha of that we're going to be greater than the stars? Somebody asked that. I'm just going to finish off here. And then somebody also asked, when the Geula arrives, how will all the Jews be cleaned in order to receive the complete revelation of the light of Geula? So those are two of the questions, and then we'll finish off.
Well, I don't know which one to answer first, but the reason why the Golus is 2,000 years, it's really far longer than it should have been. But the Mersham does not want anything to linger, and he wants to remove every sin, viability of every sin. What he has done is instead of making it instead of punishing the Jews. For instance, let me give one example: the Holocaust. Why such a barbaric and heinous form? Because what the Russian, let's put it this way: Yisurin, or suffering, is one of the ways of tikkun. That's how we atone for our sins. The problem is that we have so many sins based on God's understanding, not ours. We don't understand. Through the thousands of years, and it would take at least another couple of thousand years for us to suffer sufficiently to have an atonement. What God decided, and this is part of the concept of the Holocaust, what God decided is something strange. He's going to combine 100 years of Yisurin in 5 years. That is the meaning of the Holocaust. What the Holocaust is, it sped up enormously accelerated the time of the Mashiach coming. So instead of coming another 500 years from now, he's going to come in another 5. But in order to have that accomplished, Hashem had to accelerate the process. He did the exact same thing in Yetzias Mitzrayim. The Jews were supposed to be there 400 years. What the Hashem did is he sped it up, because the Jews were not going to last. How did he speed it up? That when the Mashiach came to Egypt, Mitzrayim, right, Moshe Rabbeinu, got much worse for months, because he commanded that they make their own straw. Not only make bricks, Pari commanded to make bricks, but he commanded that they should make straw also. So they were up the whole night, which is ridiculous. They didn't sleep for months. Yisurin was unbelievably intensified. Why? Because he had to satisfy justice, bring Yisurin for suffering in order to atone, in order for the Jews to get out earlier. That's exactly what's happening in the Holocaust. In fact, it's exactly what's happening now. There's a tremendous rise in Yisurin of the Jews, right? Many, many Jews are experiencing tremendous difficulty. You see, in order to accelerate, there are so many things that accelerate the process of the Mashiach. To give you a cute example, which is true. Why do you think there's a stock market? Most people think, well, to make people wealthy. Of course not. The stock market is to accelerate the messianic process. Why? Because it takes many, many years to reward somebody that doesn't deserve the future world, right? You have to open a business and so on. So God creates a device called the stock market where you can become a multimillionaire in 2 days. And all of a sudden, you've accomplished your reward and you don't get Olam Haba. Or, if he wants you to suffer, he will, instead of going to a business that will slowly unwind, he makes you lose $1 million in the stock market. All of these are accelerating devices that people don't realize. They're not to make you wealthy. They're not to make you poor. They are to make you suffer much quicker or get rewarded much quicker. That's why you have a thing called the stock market. Now, how many people are going to think about that? They don't, because they don't realize the dynamics of the divine plan, what it needs to accomplish. You see, and because God wants to bring the Messianic era quick, that's why he does all of this. The Holocaust, the stock market. I mean, where he brings in Trump against all reason, and it's miraculous to begin the Messianic process, and that's exactly what Trump is doing. He's beginning the Messianic process, and not only that, he's beginning the Messianic process with Yishmael, doing tshuva. All of this is happening now in record speed. That's what it's all for. But in order to understand all this, you need to know the divine plan, or else you don't understand what's going on. You see? So I would certainly recommend listen to the shurim I've given. They're all about the divine plan. Okay, I hope I answered.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Rabbi Kessin. Thank you so much for your amazing Torah. I don't know. This was, I'm sure everybody feels the same way. This was brilliant.
Well, I certainly hope that I have convinced people that everything has a plan.
Yeah.
Everything has a reason and a purpose, but it's based on the divine plan, not on the New York Times. And I hope that people think about that no matter what they have to go through in life, they always say to themselves, Gamzu Toivo. This too is for the good, right? It's all part of the plan. It's all to make sure that I will be in the future world for eternity, eternal bliss. The only reason why God does this, because the Torah never lies. God says 3 things. I'm your father. Imagine a being of infinite proportions is our father. And God says we are his children. Bonamatem Lashem Elokechem. Do you imagine that God acknowledges that we are his children? And the last thing he said, Ki ahavcho Hashem Elokecho, was God, dear Lord, God loves you. Will a being who loves us do anything negative to us? Of course not. And the Torah never lies. To think that God is doing evil to us means that you think the Torah is lying or bluffing or whatever. No. All of this is to make sure that we will inherit the future world. I'll tell you one thing. When the Messianic begins, the Beis Hamikdash is here and all that, right? You will not believe the toiv, the goodness, the unbelievable magnificence of what the Jews will be in this world. Amen. Where everything will be replaced by unbelievable devotion to the Jewish people by all the nations of the world.
Amen.
See?
Amen. No. Amen. Amazing. Amazing, Rabbi Kessin. Thank you so much. This was so needed and so amazing. Thank you so much. Hashem should bless you, as you should continue to have good health, be able to reach tens of thousands of Jews all around the world, and through your words and your Torah should be able to bring nechama, but also to bring Jews back to to its source, to the Torah, to Hashem. And thank you so much for agreeing to do this for Aliyah's neshama of my very very beautiful brother Tzvi ben Moshe Ruvain. Thank you so much.
Right. Okay, take care. We'll speak.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Amazing. Okay, everyone. So I'm just going to go off. I can't get